Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's dive into today's story, a boat shed, a stubborn coworker, and some lighthearted, well-earned petty revenge. It's all about cracking codes, literally and figuratively, and getting the last laugh while keeping things professional. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Cracking the code, my petty revenge in the boat shed saga. At my job, there's a tight-knit group of people who are qualified to operate the small boats we use for a variety of tasks. Everything from environmental inspections and security checks to seaside pickups, drop-offs, and, heaven forbid, oil spills in the area. This year, I finally completed my training and became a proud member of the team. While there aren't any additional pay benefits, it's great because it means I can drop any other job I'm on and jump into boat work, especially in the summer. It's fantastic. The small boat team has a well-equipped shop/garage building separate from the main hangout, aptly named the boat shed. Inside, there are supplies, tools, and all the essentials you'd need before heading out on the water. Most importantly, the shed stores life jackets, pre-launch safety checklists, and the Coast Guard compliant radios used for communication. The shed's locked, though, because of all the valuable equipment inside. Anything that's not bolted down is likely to be taken if left unattended. Now to the main story. Most of the team works in the traditional day shift, with only me and one other person working the night shift. Since the day shift does most of the work, we don't get much boat time. But when we do, it's almost always me and a coworker whom I'll call Red. Red's a nice guy, and we work well together, but for some reason, he absolutely refuses to tell me the combination to the boat shed. It's not a huge issue when we're working together, but if Red's out sick that day, I can't get in. That is, until I crack the code myself. Through trial and error and a lot of patience, I managed to figure it out. Now I can get into the shed whenever I need to. Victory. But then I had a thought. If I tell Red I know the code, everything goes back to normal. But if I don't tell him, he has to come and open the door for me every time I need access. So that's exactly what I've been doing. For months now, I found excuses to get into the shed. Hey, Red, I got my own waterproof jacket. Can you let me in to hang it up? Or, I noticed one of the mooring lines is frayed. Can you let me in to grab a replacement? My favorite is, Red, can you grab a checklist and a radio for me? It's my turn to drive and I need to do the checks. Every single time he goes out of his way to open the door for me. The best part came when Red wasn't around one night and the boss came out with me. We approached the boat shed and he offered to open the door, but I told him it was fine and unlocked it myself. I've complained before about Red not telling me the code, and the boss had said he couldn't force Red to share it. So when the boss saw me open it, he asked, "Did he finally tell you the code?" I explained my petty revenge, and he laughed, calling me an evil genius. Then we got back to work. This sounds like a safety issue. If you're the only one working or the one in charge, you ought to have the code. Why isn't your boss authorizing you to have it? If you're responsible enough to be on the team, you're responsible enough to have the code. The other problem, now you have unauthorized access to the boat shed. If something goes missing, vandalism, etc., especially if you separate from employment for any reason, the first person they're going to look at is the one without authorized access. For your own protection here, you either need to be authorized or they need to change the code and you go back to the other process. You don't want to get sucked into the middle of a police investigation just because you guessed the code. And our second story. Karen tried to fire the boss and got fired instead. Little backstory. I'm a Luxembourger living in the Netherlands. While I picked up Dutch pretty well, my accent still gives me away as a foreigner. I own a chain of supermarkets in the province, but I usually hang out at the original store in my hometown. Most employees know my name, but only the managers and directors recognize me since I personally hired them. This story takes place in January, a couple of months before the lockdown. It was about 2 p.m. and I was visiting a store I don't usually frequent to check on operations. I was chatting with Michael, the store manager, and a good friend of mine, when he was called away to deal with something in the bread section. Left alone, I stood in the middle of the store texting my son about school when it happened. Out of nowhere, an employee, let's call her Karen, approached me, her face scrunched up with indignation. Karen, "Hey, old man, put that phone away." I looked around thinking she was talking to someone else, Before I could react, she snatched my phone out of my hand and stuffed it in her pocket. Me, excuse me, who do you think you're talking to, old lady? I'm not even that old, I'm only 50. Karen's smug expression twisted into one of pure rage. Karen, how dare you speak to me like that? I'm reporting you to the manager and having you fired. At that moment, I saw Michael standing a few meters behind Karen, listening to every word. He gave me a subtle nod, the kind that said, "Oh, this is going to be fun." Michael approached, acting like he was siding with Karen. Michael, well, it sounds like someone's in big trouble. Let's head to my office and sort this out. Karen's face lit up with the smuggest grin imaginable, thinking she'd won. Meanwhile, Michael was clearly holding back laughter as he gestured for me to follow him. In the office, Michael asked Karen to explain what happened. Karen, I saw this old man standing in the middle of the aisle playing games on his phone and eating a bag of crisps he'd taken off the shelf. He was completely ignoring customers and being a terrible example for the store. Michael nodded seriously, casting me a faux disapproving look. Michael, wow, OP. I can't believe you'd do something like that. You seemed like such a good worker when I hired you. What's gotten into you? Karen's smugness hit new heights. Me playing along, I'm sorry. I just got bored of cutting meat and wanted to take a break. So yeah, I grabbed a bag of crisps and started gaming. My bad. Michael launched into a lecture about respect, rules, and professionalism. Then, with a dramatic flourish, he turned to me. Michael, OP, would you like to take on the responsibility of firing this dishonorable employee? Me, it'd be my pleasure. I turned to Karen. You are hereby immediately dismissed from your position. Now, would you prefer to leave quietly or shall we escort you out? Karen's face turned ghost white. The realization that she'd just tried to fire the owner of the entire supermarket chain hit her like a ton of bricks. Without saying a word, she bolted out of the office, ran through the store, and disappeared. We never heard from Karen again. Michael and I laughed about it for weeks. I don't know what made her think she could pull a power move on a random employee. But one thing's for sure, she learned the hard way not to mess with the boss of the bosses. Moral of the story, don't let your ego write checks your job can't cash. Watching Karen realize she'd been berating the actual owner must have been priceless. Imagine thinking you're delivering justice and then being hit with the cold, hard truth. You just messed with the guy who signs your paycheck. Or at least oversees the ones who do. And our last story. Riverside House. Hello guys, today I want to share a story that, in my opinion, deserves its own post here on Reddit. A story about how I avenged the inherited land for which my cousin grandmother, who was always a role model to me, paid with her life. Well, almost. Anyway, sit back and relax. This is going to be interesting. It all started with an inheritance. My cousin grandmother, loved by everyone for her kindness and her ability to find a way out of any situation, suddenly passed away. Her only son, my cousin, turned out to be a complete loser, a drug addict and a wanderer, so Grandma decided to leave her entire plot of land to me just to spite him and say, "Take that." The land was located in a small, sparsely populated area on a promontory that curved along a river. The taxes were ridiculously low, and I thought it was a stroke of luck. When the changes came. A few years later, the area started developing rapidly. Suburban construction drove up the prices, and along with them, the annual taxes on the land. I expected the development to die down soon, but on the contrary, the tax burden became unbearable. I decided it was time to sell the land. But before selling, I wanted to inspect the property myself to make sure everything was in order. An unexpected discovery. There was an old little house with a septic tank and a great view of the river from the hill, but that was how it used to be. While walking through my favorite crescent of land, I noticed something strange. Next to the new residential development, there was a luxurious villa. No fence, no property signs, just built there. What the hell is this? I muttered to myself as I got closer to take a better look. At that moment, I had no idea that my life was about to turn into a real thriller. The first encounter with Karen. I got in touch with the developer, a woman named Karen, who claims she was the legal user of the land. We met at the site, and it immediately became clear this woman was the very embodiment of arrogance. Karen looked me up and down and said, "Listen, darling, you might think you have an inheritance here, but I have all the documents proving my right to this land." And besides, I just love beautiful places, so back off. I couldn't believe my ears. Documents? I have a valid deed of ownership. Your papers are a fake, Karen. She smirked and sharply replied, "Oh, please, your boring deeds and outdated traditions just don't go with the times. My parents are multimillionaires, so soon I'll be one too. And your old lady probably signed something offhand, and now the land is mine. Clearly, you're just not in the loop." I felt adrenaline surging through me. Karen frowned as if hearing an insult, snapped back, "Get off my land. You better focus on something useful rather than playing with words." Escalation of the conflict. The situation quickly escalated. Instead of calmly discussing the disputed matter, Karen began loudly and aggressively defending her position. In the midst of the heated dialogue, a woman named Mari appeared, apparently thinking that my conflict with Karen was excellent entertainment, and she called 911. When the police arrived, Karen, without taking her eyes off the haughty face, commented, "Well, now you're going to get caught for your nonsense, darling. Oh, sorry, I didn't expect someone to take my conquering style so seriously." In the end, I was detained because they both claimed that I had been harassing and insulting Karen without cause. After the arrest, I felt insulted and deceived. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. The legal battle. Immediately after the arrest, I contacted my old lawyer who'd been Grandma's trusted person long before her time and was a true master of his craft. He immediately got to work. "Don't worry, buddy, we're dealing with some serious fraud here. Those documents you showed are complete forgeries." After gathering all the necessary evidence and witness testimonies, we proved that the documents on which Karen based her claims were fake. She claimed that she'd been taking care of the land for years in order to acquire squatters' rights, but it turned out that the date on her papers was from before my grandmother's death. In court, Karen didn't hold back. "You just don't understand. My parents provided everything for me, and I have the right to decide what happens to this land." We didn't have to say much in response. She dug her own grave. Karen snapped, "You must be so backward that you don't understand how the modern world works. The law is what I say it is." The court ruled that Karen's documents were forged and awarded compensation for the expenses related to dismantling the villa and clearing the land, as well as 2 years probation for the forgery. Moreover, due to her disrespect for the court and rude behavior, she was sentenced to 2 weeks behind bars. Although her parents paid all the expenses, they later sent her to a rehabilitation center, and I never saw her again. Epilogue, a new chapter. After all these events, my lawyer, who'd always dreamed of owning a piece of land by the river, proposed buying the property. Being absolutely sure that it was now in good hands, I offered him a good price, and I kept a small piece of land with Grandma's old house for myself. As they say, at the end of this story, I not only made a nice profit, but also got a great joke for parties. Now we have a piece of land that survived more drama than most TV shows. I think someday I'll renovate that little house, and it'll be a perfect place for my family, with a great neighbor next door. May luck always be on your side. It's nice when stories like this end well. I hope the guy does well and keeps it that way. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.